Texas's loss to Georgia in the SEC championship game is all on Quinn Ewers. All his fault. And Steve Sarkisian needs to turn the keys over to Arch Manning ASAP. To many of you, I think overreacting, to many of you, you would have turned the keys over during the game to Arch Manning. That would solve all of your problems and fix everything, and then Texas would win. That is a ridiculous overreaction. Reality. Quinn Ewers is not Josh Allen. Quinn Ewers is not Lamar Jackson. Quinn Ewers is not Patrick Mahomes. He can't carry a game by himself. But you know what? Very, very, very few players at that position can carry an entire team in a game all by themselves. This is the reality which you're not going to like. Give it a chance. Quinn Ewers actually played well in the SEC championship game. I'll say it again. He played well in the SEC championship game. Yeah, he made a couple stupid throws, but you're pretty much putting everything on your quarterback's back when you can't do anything else offensively or defensively or in special teams. You pretty much dump it on Quinn Ewers and say, would you please go be Josh Allen? It's not practical. Complete overreaction. If you make a list of reasons Texas lost to Georgia, I would reverse it and just bring no feelings whatsoever to the discussion and say Georgia beat Texas. Stop with this stuff. They beat them twice. I think it's pretty clear. But if you make a list of reasons why Georgia beat Texas, or if you would like, why Texas lost to Georgia, again, Quinn Ewers is near the bottom of that list. That's the reality. It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the only thing people ever seem to pay attention to in football, and that is the quarterback. But he's near the bottom of the list in terms of why that game went the way that it went. It's not his fault. His offensive line was owned by Georgia. It's not his fault. His defensive line was owned by Georgia. It's not his fault. His special teams are a total disaster in every facet of special teams play. None of that is his fault. You do all that wrong. You are owned by your opponent in the areas where it matters most. Okay? There's nothing your quarterback can do to save you. Unless maybe it's Josh Allen. And you know what? He played one of the greatest games the position has ever seen statistically. And you know what he couldn't overcome? He couldn't overcome everything else his team had done wrong, and the Bills lost. So screaming that your quarterback at fill-in-the-blank program at Texas, screaming that Quinn Ewers is going to be Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Montana and Brady all into one is just ridiculous. You can't compensate for all the other terrible ways your team has been owned. It doesn't work that way. Everyone seems to think the only thing that matters in football now, and I guess this is the fantasy footballization of the way everyone looks at things, but you think the only thing is quarterback. So let me remind you that Georgia is better. Okay, let me just let it sink in. Georgia is better where it matters most. Quarterback doesn't matter most. It doesn't. You now should know that. Georgia is better.
Hey, Austin, Jeff Ward here, and I never thought I'd be in an accident and need a personal injury attorney. And then sure enough, less than a mile from my house, I was blindsided. I was injured. My world was turned completely upside down. I called DJC Law, and their team took care of everything. I got the best result possible. Don't just take my word for it. They have over 1,000 five-star reviews. So if you're injured, call 512-888-9999 and get your justice at teamjustice.com.
Then Texas, where it matters most. You ready for the short list? The offensive line, the defensive line, the special teams. And I would add the Georgia DNA is superior too. None of that has anything to do with the quarterback. None. Sorry. The game is simple, right? It's we don't want it to be. We just want to follow the ball around the field, but it doesn't quite work that way. When you can block, when you can defend, and when you can kick better than your opponent, you win every single time. You know that? I didn't mention passing. I'm not even talking about passing. When you can block, defend, and kick better than the team you're playing, you win every single time. You win most of the time if you defend and kick better than your opponent. Notice again, I've not mentioned passing. And there's proof in the Georgia-Texas game that the passing didn't really matter that much. You win most of the time by defending and kicking better than the team you're playing. Georgia beat Texas with their backup quarterback that has played all of 20 snaps in a single year. Okay? That's not exactly Brady. That's not exactly Josh Allen. That's not exactly Lamar Jackson. The dude played 20 snaps, and they won. Georgia beat Texas in overtime by bringing, just to show to you what matters most. Okay? Georgia had to. It's pretty impressive, quick thinking by Georgia's sideline in overtime. But just to show you that throwing it and quarterback doesn't matter as much as the stuff like blocking, defending, and kicking. But Georgia brought back their starting quarterback whose arm is dangling at his side. He couldn't grip the ball. He couldn't throw. They brought him back in, and he handed the ball off so Georgia could shove the opponent out of the way and win the game, because shoving matters more than throwing. It's really simple. Okay? See, this is why all season long, and I know it's completely unexpected and understandable that fans, would get into this place, but this is why I say all the time, you only know how good you are because the game is about blocking, defending, and kicking. It's not all about throwing. So you only really know how good you are when you play like competition. So rolling Louisiana Monroe, rolling UTSA, rolling a terrible Oklahoma team doesn't tell you anything. Because in the end, the game is about blocking and defending and kicking. That's how you win. So you never know. Texas averaged just, a little over a yard per rush. They had let this sink in, almost 20 plays for a loss. That's going backwards, see, because that's not about passing. That's about the defending team shoving you around. 20 plays for a loss. They missed 2 field goals. Remember what I said? It's about blocking, it's about defending, and it's about kicking. That's all you got to do. That's what you have to do. They started the game, Texas, just to show you this is the difference in the DNA too, I think, which is, can't be dismissed. But because I said, it is clear that Georgia's better in blocking, Georgia's better in defending, Georgia's clearly better in kicking, and their DNA is superior. There's just a DNA makeup that I do think matters. But Texas starts the game by attempting to return the opening kickoff from 7 yards deep. And they get blown up at the 10, of course. They were even so clueless. This is the difference in the DNA. Texas was even so clueless. I don't say a whole lot when I watch a game, but I remember mumbling out loud, why wouldn't you expect a fake? Because the backup punter is in the game, because the other punter got hurt, right? And he'd not punted this year, so it seemed pretty obvious. I don't know, maybe they're not going to punt. But Texas somehow was so clueless, they allowed Georgia to run a fake punt with a backup punter who's not punted before. Texas was barely even lined up. They also had 11 penalties. So Georgia beat Texas with a backup quarterback, a backup punter, and no receivers at all. None of the skill stuff that everyone focuses on. None of that stuff. They had none of it. They don't have anybody that can catch, but they can block, and they can defend, and they can kick. That's it. That's the recipe. So they block better, they defend better, they kick better. Now, the last thing is the Georgia DNA. I mean, I don't know that it's easy to focus on what Texas doesn't do. I just think they play somebody better at the important stuff than them. They do. They're playing someone who's better at those things than them. And the Georgia DNA can't be dismissed. What I mean by DNA is Georgia's smarter, by far. It's just the team plays the game better. They just play it better. They play it smarter. They don't do stupid stuff. Okay? They're more resilient. My gosh, in Austin, if Texas lost a couple quarterbacks or lost a punter, people would still be whining. Hell, the head coach is whining at halftime about penalties. Not Georgia. They just keep going and going. They're resilient, man. There's something to that DNA. And they grind. They're an incredibly limited team, and they're limited in the ways that most fans care most about, throwing and catching.